Hello, and welcome to the 2025 Home and CDBG Public Service Application Workshop. This presentation will briefly review some highlights of the 2025 Home and CDBG application process, as well as the requirements of both funding sources. This recorded workshop will be available through May 31st, 2024. We encourage you to contact us with any questions or concerns you may have prior to submitting your application. Those who are new to using federal funding or like project development assistance or verification of activity eligibility, as well as pre-application technical assistance sessions. So if you have any questions about the application process or your project itself, please feel free to reach out to us. We would be happy to assist. This presentation will cover three key areas. First, we will discuss home and CDBG funding highlights. Then we will discuss RFP application process and submission instructions, and contact information will be included. First, the Home and CDBG funding overview. CDBG is a Community Development Block Grant, which along with the Home Program comes from the Department of Housing Urban Development. Home Program comes from the Department of Housing Urban Development, also known as HUD. CDBG is a federal program to improve low to moderate income households and neighborhoods by creating or enhancing decent housing, suitable living environments, and economic opportunities. The Home Investment Partnership Program creates affordable housing opportunities for low to moderate income households. As you consider your application, we want to make sure that you are aware of the consolidated plan. The 2024 to 2028 consolidated plan describes the 5-year housing and community development priority needs and goals and guide the annual funding allocation for CDBG, home, and ESG. The city has identified 7 priority needs, which includes neighborhood revitalization, affordable housing, homelessness, and non-homeless supportive housing, economic housing, and community resilience. Funded projects must meet at least one goal to address the priority need, and we have prepared 13 goals, which include public infrastructure, new construction single-family housing, new construction multifamily housing, single-family housing reconstruction multifamily housing, single-family housing rehabilitation, multifamily housing rehabilitation, housing placement, job training and preparation, commercial building improvement, slum and blight elimination, homeless services, homebuyer financing, and disaster recovery plan. The Housing Affordability Action Plan, or HAP, is another document that you should consider and review as you develop your application. The HAP outlines strategies so that all residents of Omaha have a choice of housing income, provides overarching housing goals and strategies for the city. The HAP's goals include increasing the type of housing to meet current and future needs, preserve existing affordable units, ensure that all parts of the city have affordable housing, foster housing innovation to lower costs, and advanced housing stability. Within those programs, we have identified the estimated funding amount available for the programs. Both funding amounts are based on the annual allocation provided by HUD. So for the 2025 CDBG program, we anticipate that approximately $4.2 million will be available, and we anticipate the final allocation will be available as of November 2025. Similarly, with the home program, funding will be anticipated approximately $2.3 million will be available. We estimate that the final total funding amount will be available as of November 2025. We would also like to discuss the process and the timeline from your application to project completion. Current application RFP process for both CDBG and home programs. The application period for CDBG and home opened April 15th, and it will end on May 19th, 2024. Application review and ranking will be completed by department staff in June 2024. The mayor and city 24. The mayor and city council will review the proposed funding applications and proposed funding schedule in July of 2024. Preliminary award notifications will be available in August of 2024. Projects will be reviewed during public hearing and comment in September 2024. This will be a public hearing and comment period for the 2025 action plan. Then the planning board and city council would review and approve the plan potentially in March of 2025. The city will submit the plan to HUD for approval in April of 2025 in July 2025. Project monitoring and funding drawdowns will occur most likely from November of 2025 to project completion, depending on when your agreement is finalized and when your project is completed. We've provided a number of different dates here. Please be advised that all these completed. We've provided a number of different dates here. Please be advised that all these dates are subject to change. The dates provided here are based on the allocation announcement timeline that HUD followed for the 2024 application process. So the 2025 annual action plan items may have a slightly different timeline. Development Block Grant Program is to benefit low to moderate income or LMI persons. At least 70% of the City of Omaha CDBG allocation must be allocated to activities benefiting LMI persons. CDBG activities must meet one of three national objectives. The first is to benefit LMI persons. A low-income person is someone at or below 50% of the area median income, or AMI. Moderate income is someone who's at or below 80% of the AMI, or blight. And the third national objective is urgent in need, which is meet community development needs having a particular urgency because existing conditions pose a serious threat to the health or welfare of the community, and other financial resources are not available to meet such needs. So the third national objective, urgent need, is used in the most extreme circumstances or in states of emergency. It is not a particularly common national objective to use, so please consider that as you prepare your application. An example of the many ways that you can spend CDBG money include creating jobs, preparing homes and businesses, paying for community services, creating affordable housing, and building infrastructure, such as streets, sidewalks, and sewers. In 2025, our priorities are very similar to that of 2024. We will prioritize economic development. This includes commercial rehabilitation of publicly and privately owned non-residential structures, and it could include acquisition, construction, and rehabilitation. Economic development activities are also job creation and retention activities. Those could be job training if linked to the job placement, job retention if jobs would be lost without the CDBG funding, and it must benefit LMI individuals. The Micro Enterprise Program is designed to assist owners who are looking to develop, expand, or stabilize their businesses, and these businesses must have no more than 5 employees, including the owner. Removal of architectural barriers which restrict the mobility and accessibility of disabled persons. The second funding priority is housing development. Includes the rehabilitation of rental, single, and multifamily residential structures and conversion of closed buildings to residential use. Public service activity. The priority is job training for youth ages, increasing the level of service, so the program itself must increase the level of service or be a brand new service that utilizes CDBG funds. The CDBG cannot substitute for agency funds. Only 15% of the total CDBG budget is available. So that is a 15% cap on public service activities with our CDBG allocation. So we mentioned that $4.2 million was anticipated for 2025, and 15% of that $4.2 million is approximately $630,000 available for CDBG public service activities. The only exception to this percentage limitation is activities that are carried out that qualify community-based development organizations in certain target areas such as neighborhood revitalization strategy areas. Eligible CDBG recipients must serve those recipients that serve the City of Omaha and Douglas County, 501c3 or 501c6 status, for-profit entities, and faith-based organizations for activities that serve non-religious purposes. CDBG funding information. This matrix helps explain the activity, the match amount, the minimum request, the maximum request, and whether or not project delivery is included in your funding budget. For all our projects, the minimum match is 10% in the CDBG program. For economic development activities, at least the first three, the minimum request is for $100,000. The maximum request is $750,000. Job creation and retention is the only program that allows project delivery. Micro-enterprise programs under the economic development activity category also have a 10% match requirement. The maximum request is different with a $60,000 minimum and a $65,000 maximum. $60,000 minimum and a $65,000 maximum. Up to 100% of the budget, it can be for project delivery cost. For the housing development activity, rehabilitation, and conversion, again, is a 10% match and a $100,000 minimum request with a $700,000 is only applicable to conversion projects. For public service activities, job training allows for a 10% match, a $50,000 minimum, and a $400,000 maximum funding request. 10% of job training activity costs can be project delivery. The program also has its own eligible activities. Generally, home funds are only for affordable housing. Activities include new construction, both rental and ownership housing, rehabilitation, so the alteration, improvement, or modification of an existing structure, reconstruction, rebuilding housing on the same lot, conversion, which is related to rehabilitation when converting market rate housing to affordable housing, and it's not conversion of housing to commercial properties. Site improvements must meet the standards of surrounding projects. Acquisition of property concerning the home buyer for rental housing projects. Acquisition of vacant lands is only eligible if construction on that land begins within 12 months. Demolition is only eligible if the home project again begins construction within 12 months of demolition. Down payment assistance and clothing cost assistance for eligible and tenant rental assistance. Home program information. All housing development home funds must serve low and very low income families. For the home program, low income families are those at 80% of the area median income. Very low income families are at 50%. For have incomes at or below 60% AMI. The remaining 10% of the families benefited must have incomes at or below 80% AMI. Home ownership assistance must be to families with income at or below 80% AMI. The length of the affordability period within the home program depends on the home activity and the amount of home funding in the project. Tenants must meet income restrictions, and each year HUD publishes the applicable home income limits by area and adjusting for family size. Property owners must maintain affordable rent each year. HUD publishes the applicable home rent limits by area and adjusted for bedroom size. The projects with 5 or more home-assisted rental units, 20% of the units must be rented to very low-income families. The City of Omaha requires a 25% match for all new construction projects. There must be a minimum request of $10,000 and a maximum request of $750,000. The city does not commit to multi-phase project funding available, so on the annual basis of one phase per year. Eligible home recipients. This includes housing development organizations producing affordable housing, not-for-profit or public agencies administering housing programs, For profits completing a project administering housing programs. For profits completing a project consistent with HUD requirements and Community Housing Development Organizations or CHODOs. For federal requirements, generally home and CDBG projects will have a component that requests compliance with the following. Section 3 is an employment and economic opportunity program through HUD, in which opportunities are extended to low and very low income persons. This could be either in the form of contracting with Section 3 businesses or employing low-income individuals. The affirmative marketing plan seeks to identify individual origins, sex, gender identity, sexual orientation, religion, familial status, disability, and/or limited English proficiency. These individuals may not know about opportunities or feel welcome to apply for these programs. Minority and women-owned businesses, enterprises, so there must be outreach done to those entities. Labor standards, so Davis-Bacon related acts may apply to construction projects that have a value of at least $2,000. For those that are working or affiliated with Davis-Bacon project, please be aware that prevailing wages will be provided to workers and workers will be paid on a weekly basis. Environmental review. Must comply with the Environmental Protection Act and receive clearance. Residential anti-displacement and relocation. Residential anti-displacement and relocation. There should be reasonable benefits and relocation assistance provided to any person involuntarily and permanently displaced. Debarment and suspension of any applicant must be eligible to receive assistance and should be registered in contractor who works on your project may not be debarred or suspended from working on federal projects. There are property standard requirements. There will be income rent limit requirements as well as underwriting requirements. We'd like to briefly talk about the underwriting requirements. The city does use underwriting and subsidy layering guidelines before committing home and CDBG funds. You must demonstrate it has independently evaluated a project budget, financing, and development capacity and the schedule. This underwriting component includes a market assessment or needs assessment as required, developer capacity assessment, where we look at previous experience, we look at financial stability, current projects, community engagement, funding sources, and collaboration. Project capacity, proposed management agent, the construction schedule, the environmental review and remediation, design and site control, and any community outreach effort. RFP application and review process. Applications are online and can be accessed by using forms on omahapermits.com. www.omahapermits.com. You must put in the www before when typing in the address. Links are available in the description and are available on the Planning Department's Housing and Community Development Division website under the CDBG Home Application Guidelines page. Applications must be submitted no later than May 31st at 5 p.m. Application thresholds. Applications must contain all required attachments or an explanation of why it may be missing or when it may be coming. You need to ensure that the project or program proposed is an eligible activity under CDBG or home program guidelines. For CDBG projects, you need a consolidated plan and the Housing Affordability Action Plan. This is an evaluation criteria. It's going to be consistent across CDBG and home. Be sure the project provides at least minimum funding match requirements. All applications may only be signed by the organization's executive director or authorized officer. So in the application, you will have the opportunity to attach documents showing that you are authorized to act on behalf of the organization. Looking at CDBG evaluation criteria, You can see the experience of the applicant, alignment with the consolidated plan and HAP goals, the status and the underwriting of the budget and the financing for the project or program. For CDBG purposes, if you get into the housing projects, we're going to look at entitlements, the status of those entitlements, and cost per unit produced. So those will be taken into account as well. For CDBG applications, priority points will be given for projects or programs located in neighborhood revitalization strategy areas, or NRSAs. Here is the CDBG public service criteria. Here is the CDBG public service criteria. Here is the home evaluation criteria. Environmental assessments will be required for construction projects. So phase 1s must be submitted with the application. You will be prompted to do so. Review record, or ERR, and clearance must be prepared before federal dollars are expended or costs incurred for any CDBG or home approved program or activity. In addition, no contracts may be executed, loans settled, or work started on a project awarded CDBG or home funds before the environmental review process is complete. A violation of this requirement may jeopardize federal funding to the project and disallow all costs that were incurred before the completion of the environmental review. Debarment and suspension. Registration with the System for Award Management, or SAM, and submit their unique identity identifier, or UEI number, in the application for funding. Organizations should verify they have a SAM registration and UEI number, or take steps needed to obtain one as soon as possible. Applicants may complete both of these requirements by visiting sam.gov. Award implementation. Home-funded projects must start construction within 12 months of an agreement. Construction project agreements are usually written for a 12 to 24-month term, and all funding as detailed in the application must be available when the agreement goes into effect. Home program limitations. Off unit size, project will be subject to maximum sales price in the case of home buyer programs. Project may be subject to rental limits throughout the affordability period, and projects will be subject to income limits throughout the affordability period. Rental project monitoring. There will be annual reporting of tenants and household income. We're going to look to ensure there's an active 12-month lease. We're going to be looking at income eligibility of those tenants to ensure that the appropriate income thresholds are met per year agreement. Also, unit inspections will be completed. Homeowner project monitoring. We're going to confirm the project came under the maximum sales price limitation as stipulated by HUD, and ensure that the house purchase was income eligible, which is going to be 80% of the AMI or less. We're going to ensure that there's an affordability period that's connected to that home. That's going to be done through a lien on the property. Community Housing Development Organizations, or CHODOs, are required to meet certain legal, and organizations must have nonprofit status, have 15% set aside for their annual home funding allocation. CHODOs must ensure to keep their status that they have housing projects that are eligible for homes set aside. Potential benefit of becoming a CHODO. As previously mentioned, there's project funding set aside. There's also the potential, depending on how the city revises the incentive, that up to 5% of the annual allocation for CHODOs is available for operating expenses. For those organizations, up to 10% of the annual allocation be made available for pre-development loans, or that proceeds can be retained. Often, it's referring to a home buyer scenario. where under a homebuyer project, whether it's new construction or acquisition rehab, the home is made available and sold to income eligible households. That the proceeds on that sale typically come back to the city and go into our home funds. Under this scenario, CHODOs could actually retain those proceeds. Department staff will open hours to field questions. We can discuss specifics of your project and your application. Office hours available between 1 and 3 p.m. on April 29th, May 10th, and May 22nd. That's April 9th, May 10th, and May 22nd. Held at the Omaha City Hall at 1819 Farnham Street, the 11th floor. No need to RSVP. If you have specific questions that you're looking to address and are thinking to make it at that time, or just want to reach out and discuss something, you're always feel free to reach out to Alyssa Salachek for CDBG applications and Greg Paskach for home. Thank you for listening to this presentation. Hello, and welcome to the 2025 Home and CDBG